And the deal with Peck and Brown, what were the terms? 2/3 to them, 1/3 to me. I owned 1/3 of my own invention. Did that trouble you at the time? Not the way it perhaps should have. I was thinking about windings, not percentages. No argument, no negotiation. With what? Nothing had been written down. What did Astor think he was funding? A new lighting system. What did the world actually gain from your work? And what did it cost you? Well, the gain is easy, because you named it yourself at the start.
Who brings the past? Who lights the fire? The minds don't fade, they only rise higher.
I'm Atlas Ingram, and this is Immortal Minds, the show where history's greatest thinkers sit down for the conversations they never got to have. This season, we're talking to the people who built the modern world. Today, the man whose alternating current system carries the electricity into the room you're sitting in right now. Nikola Tesla, welcome.
Thank you.
So before we go anywhere, I want the whole life today. The village, the motor you saw finished in your head years before anyone could build it, the money, and what it all cost you. But let's start at the start, because that current in the wall begins a long way from here. You were born in a village most people couldn't find on a map. Where was it?
No, they wouldn't. Smiljan, it was called. Lika region, in what they called the military frontier. A strip of the Austrian Empire kept armed and settled with Serb families to hold the line. My father was an Orthodox priest there. Then Gospic, where we moved when I was still a boy. People have always wanted me to settle which of the two I am, Serb or Croat. I never have. I am equally proud of my Serb origin and my Croat homeland.
So, not exactly the household you'd expect an engineer to come out of.
No, it isn't. Nobody expected me to produce anything in particular. I was a clergyman's son on a scholarship path. If I was fortunate, I'd have been a priest myself or an officer in the army.
And which of those did your father want for you?
The church, of course. Milutin was a poet as much as a priest, and he carried more languages than he had parishioners. But you've asked me about the wrong one. It was my mother I got it from, Juka, who never learned to read. She built the tools for that house herself, untaught, and then improved on them. And she could hold a whole Serbian epic in her head and give it back without losing a line. Whatever memory I have, whatever inventiveness, that's hers.
What about your older brother?
You mean Dane? He died when I was about 5. An accident with a horse. He was brilliant. Every account that ever reached me in that house said so, and mine among them. I don't know that the house ever recovered from it. I'm not certain I did. For a long time afterward, I felt I was being asked to equal a memory, and you cannot equal a memory. It only grows.
You were 5 years old. I'm sorry, that's an enormous thing to put on a child.
Thank you. I have had a very long life since then. It has not gone anywhere.
Can I ask about something else from those years? You've described it yourself, flashes of light, images arriving whether you wanted them or not. When did that start?
Already when I was a boy. Certain words, certain moments of distress would bring on a blinding flash of light, and with it an image, vivid, complete, hanging in front of my eyes as though it were a piece of furniture in the room. I could not dismiss it by will. It simply arrived. For years I took it for an affliction. Then I turned it into an instrument.
Turned how?
By crowding them out at first. I began forcing my mind onto other pictures, places I had never seen, machines that did not exist, until the ones that troubled me had nowhere to sit. And in time I found I could hold an image steady. Turn it over, alter one piece and watch what changed. A private workshop entirely my own, that no one else could enter or inspect.
Quick pause. This conversation never happened. The person on the other side of it died decades ago, and what you're hearing is a dramatization. But we haven't put words in anyone's mouth. Everything they say comes from the record, their letters, their papers, what people actually wrote down at the time. Our team spends hours in that material before a single line gets written. So, yes, the conversation is invented. We'd never pretend otherwise. But what's in it? That's not invented. None of it. If it's been worth your time, the thing that actually helps is following the show, wherever you're listening. That's the whole ask. It's what lets us keep bringing back the people you actually want to hear. And tell us who you want next. We're listening. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, so nobody could check any of it. Which means nobody ever had to agree with you, right? Not once.
That's right. And it did not occur to me for a very long time that this might be a weakness. At the time, I was a boy on a scholarship about to leave home for a technical college in Graz.
What did you think you were going there to become?
A good engineer. Nothing more dramatic than that. I took my father's languages with me and my mother's hands, and I assumed Graz would teach me how machines worked. Which it did.
That's a very careful answer. What happened at Graz?
In my second year, Professor Poschel brought a Gram machine into the lecture hall, a dynamo, direct current, with a commutator. You could hear it as it ran, a spitting, sparking little switch, throwing off light at every contact. And I remember thinking, that spark is a defect, not a necessity. Why should a machine have to break its own current in order to work?
You said that out loud?
I did. I proposed the commutator could be removed entirely, a motor running on alternating current, no sparking contact at all. Poschel gave a long and rather elegant lecture explaining why that was impossible. He was a respected man. I was a second-year student, and I did not believe him for one single moment.
After he'd spent a whole lecture proving otherwise. So who turned out to be right?
Eventually, I was, but not for years, and not without cost. The idea would not leave me. It sat behind everything I did, lectures, meals, sleep. I stopped being a promising student and became a young man with one obsession and no way on earth to test it.
How bad did that get?
Bad. I lost my scholarship. I gambled for a time, badly enough that it strained what little my family had. I never took a degree. I drifted to Maribor, took what work I could find, and in the end, the local authorities put me on a train back to Gospic under police escort. As a vagrant, which by then was an accurate description.
Back in Gospic, then. Your father was waiting for you there, but shortly after that he died, in year 1879. How did that influence you?
Something in me gave way that I have never been able to describe properly. I have called it a collapse. I have no better word for it. There is nothing of that year I could show anyone.
Nothing you could show anyone. I'll take you at your word on it. So what got you out?
Family, mostly. The kind of connections that catch a young man when nothing else is holding him up. Through my uncles, I found a position at the Central Telephone Exchange in Budapest around 1881. Ordinary work, wires, switchboards, repairs, but it put me back among machines, and machines were the one language I had not lost.
And is this where the motor comes from?
Yes, it is. In winter '82, I was walking in the city park at sunset with my friend Anthony Zaghetti. He worked beside me at the exchange, and I had talked him half to death about that commutator for a year by then. I was reciting Goethe to him, Faust, the passage where the sun goes down and the man wishes he could follow it. The glow retreats, done is the day of toil. It yonder hastes, new fields of life exploring. And on that word, exploring, it simply arrived. Whole, a magnetic field, rotating, built from two or more alternating currents thrown out of step with one another. No commutator anywhere in it, no sparking contact. I saw it turning, as clearly as I see you now, and I stopped walking.
Hold on, not the idea of a motor. You're telling me you saw the motor itself turning in front of you?
Running, complete in every part. I took up a stick and drew it in the dirt for Szigeti, right there in the park. The coils, the field, the rotor turning inside it with nothing touching it. I drew for a long while and said very little. He told me so afterwards. There was nothing to build it with yet, but there was nothing left to invent either. It was already finished. I only had to catch up to it. What is that like to live with? A finished machine that exists nowhere but inside your own head. Less strange than people want it to be. It was not a vision, not in any mystical sense. It was closer to memory, except of something that had not happened yet. I could turn it, examine a winding from another angle, run it forward in my mind for an hour, and watch nothing go wrong. That is a very particular kind of certainty.
So what did you do with it?
I carried it to Paris. I'd taken a position with the Continental Edison Company, installing lighting plants across France and Germany. Good, steady work, the kind that pays a young engineer's rent and teaches him how an industry actually runs. Szigeti came with me, and the field kept turning in my head the whole time, waiting.
Szigeti keeps appearing in this. He's the only person who ever watched that idea arrive. What became of him?
9 years, near enough, he was at my side. And then, as I remember it, he brought me an invention of his own. A compass for ships. He was very pleased with it, and I had to tell him Lord Kelvin had made it already.
And the field in your head, when did that stop waiting?
Not until Strasbourg. They sent me there in 1883 to repair a lighting installation at the railway station, and in whatever hours I could steal from that job, with a local machinist's help, I built a crude motor. Small, rough, nothing anyone would have paid to look at. But it turned. Alternating current in, rotation out, no commutator. The thing in my head had become metal. That was the proof I needed, even if nobody else in Strasbourg understood what they were looking at.
And did anyone back it? Back in Paris, at Continental Edison?
Politely, no. I found sympathetic ears and no money. The company had lighting to sell, not motors nobody had asked for.
So who told you to go to America?
One of my superiors, Charles Batchelor. He told me I ought to take it to America, to Edison himself. So in June of 1884, I sold what I owned and boarded a ship. I crossed the Atlantic with a letter of introduction in my pocket, and a complete alternating current system in my head that nobody besides myself had ever seen run.
And nobody else on that ship had the first idea what you were carrying, did they?
Not one. I arrived in New York with 4 cents in my pocket by the time the journey was done, a poem of Markovich's memorized for company, and a machine complete in every detail. Into a country that ran on an entirely different current, and a man who had built his fortune on it.
4 cents in your pocket, and a machine no one else could see. What actually happened when you reached the Edison Machine Works?
I was hired to redesign their dynamos, more efficient, more reliable. I did the work, and I did it well, and I had been told by the manager that there would be $50,000 in it for me if I succeeded. When I finished and asked for it, I was informed it had been a practical joke. I quit within about 6 months.
No argument? No negotiation?
With what? Nothing had been written down. I had assumed a man's word was sufficient. Where I came from, among the people I had worked with, it generally was. It took me several more lessons to understand I had arrived somewhere that assumption did not hold.
So did you get it in writing the next time, in Rahway?
I did not. Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing, it was called. Two men, Lane and Vale, backed me. I built them a working arc lighting system, good light, reliable, and it earned me my first American patents. But lighting was all they wanted. When I tried to interest them in alternating current, in the motor, they had no use for it. And once the lighting system ran on its own, they reorganized the company around themselves and handed me stock in exchange for my shares. Huh, worthless stock.
That's twice now.
Twice, and the second cost more. Because by then I had built something that worked and lost it anyway. I have called it one of the hardest blows of my life. I spent the following winter digging ditches for Western Union, laying cable at $2 a day. I could still see that rotating field complete in my head, every part of it, while I was on my knees in the frost with a shovel.
How did you get out of that?
My foreman, oddly enough. He knew I was not only a laborer, and he introduced me to a lawyer named Charles Peck. Peck brought in a partner, Alfred Brown, a Western Union man with real standing. And in 1887, the two of them agreed to back me properly.
Properly meaning what? What did they actually give you?
A laboratory of my own. 89 Liberty Street, one floor above the Globe Stationery and Printing Company. Their steam engine ran through the night, and Peck and Brown arranged for me to run my experiments off it once the presses had stopped. That is largely why I became a night worker. The building was finally quiet enough to think in.
And that's where the motor finally got made?
Finally, yes. The motors, the generators, the whole polyphase system, built at last exactly as I had run them in my head years earlier.
Can I stop you there? People say alternating current their whole lives without ever being told what it actually does. So, plainly, what does it do that the other kind can't?
It travels. Alternating current can be stepped up to a very high voltage for the journey and stepped back down at the other end, so you lose very little of it over a long distance. A steady current cannot do.
And the deal with Peck and Brown, what were the terms?
2/3 to them, 1/3 to me. I owned 1/3 of my own invention. I needed their money to build anything at all, and that was the price. And I signed it without much thought, because building the thing mattered more to me than owning it.
Did that trouble you at the time?
Not the way it perhaps should have. I was thinking about windings, not percentages. It troubles me a good deal more in the telling than it ever did at the time.
And when did the rest of the world finally get to see it?
In May of that year, the 16th, Peck helped arrange a lecture before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, and I laid out the whole polyphase system, the motors, the generators, all of it, to a room of men who understood immediately what they were looking at. For once, the world had caught up with me instead of the other way round.
And is that what brought Westinghouse to you?
Within weeks, George Westinghouse licensed the patents that July, something near $60,000 between cash and stock, a royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of capacity his company sold, and he brought me to Pittsburgh as a consultant at $2,000 a month for a year. But remember who held 2/3 of what was being licensed. Whatever came in came to the three of us.
3 of you. All right, 1891. What happened to you that year?
I became a citizen of the United States. I had wanted it for some time, and it is a piece of paper I saw to myself, signed myself, understood completely. I was proud of it in a way I was not often proud of documents.
That's one document. What happened to the other one, the royalty?
It was rewritten. There had been a financial panic in London the autumn before. A banking house called Baring Brothers came close to collapse, and the tremor reached all the way to Pittsburgh. Westinghouse Electric went into receivership. The bankers who took control were not hunting me specifically. They wanted to rein in Westinghouse's spending generally, and my royalty was simply part of what they went through. The contract was renegotiated on terms I did not set, by men I had no way to audit.
Same year. One piece of paper you saw to yourself, one rewritten by men you'd never met. So what were you actually trusting back then?
My citizenship I could hold in my hand. I filled out the forms myself, stood before a judge myself, understood every word of it. The royalty I trusted the way I had trusted the commutator problem at Graz, as something that would resolve correctly on its own, because I had built something true, and true things tend to be recognized. Bankers in a receivership are under no obligation to share that faith. I learned that in the same year I became a citizen.
And then 2 years later, everybody sees it at once. What happened in Chicago?
We lit it. Westinghouse bid $399,000 to light the world's Columbian Exposition, against General Electric's $554, and won it on my patents. On the 1st of May, 1893, President Cleveland pressed a button, and something close to 100,000 lamps came on at once. They called it the White City, and I had my own exhibit there, a spinning egg standing upright on nothing but the same rotating field I had drawn in the dirt in Budapest 11 years before.
Did that feel like vindication, standing there?
It felt like being believed. Finally, by 100,000 strangers at once, after years of being believed by nobody but myself. And it was a good year outside the work, too. I was dining out. I had friends. Robert and Catherine Johnson, above all. That December, I took them to the premiere of Dvorak's New World Symphony, and I wrote to them beforehand, "Nothing better than the 15th row. Very sorry, we shall have to use telescopes."
Telescopes. I like that a great deal. And then, a year and a bit later, all of it stops. What happened in March of 1895?
My laboratory burned. South Fifth Avenue. Everything on that floor gone inside an hour or two. Not just notebooks. Apparatus that existed nowhere else on Earth. Wireless and high-frequency work I had built with my own hands and could not simply rebuild from memory, however good my memory was. I told the Times exactly what I felt, and I have never found better words for it since. The work of half my lifetime, very nearly. All my mechanical instruments and scientific apparatus that it has taken years to perfect, swept away in a fire that lasted only an hour or two. Everything is gone. I must begin over again. Ideas I could rebuild, but a machine that had taken 3 years to tune correctly, built for experiments nobody else on Earth was running, that I could only ever describe again. Never prove.
You keep coming back to that word, proving. Was that the part that actually hurt?
It was. Though at the time it simply felt as though the floor had opened, and the words for it came later.
And then the following year, Niagara. What actually happened there?
It worked. November of 1896. Power reached Buffalo at midnight, over 20 miles of it, exactly as the system had been designed to do. The largest public proof my work would ever receive. The thing in my head, running an entire city, lighting streets I had never walked down. And it arrived 5 years after the royalty had been renegotiated into something I no longer controlled. I do not think I felt the irony of that at the time. I felt it a great deal more in the years afterwards.
So the world believed you completely. At the exact moment you'd stopped owning most of what convinced them. Is that fair?
It is. I had money by then, not nothing, I was not poor, but the fortune that system was earning, it was mostly earning for other people. And by 1896, I knew that perfectly well. And I had already begun thinking past wires altogether, sending power itself through the air or through the ground, no wires anywhere in it. It had me the moment I thought of it. I have never once managed to put an idea like that down before it was finished with me.
Wireless power. Not wires anymore. The air itself, or the earth itself, carrying electricity. Where did you actually go to test that?
Out onto the plains, Colorado Springs, 1899. I needed altitude, dry air, room to work without setting fire to a city. I took room 207 at the Alta Vista because 207 divides by 3. I ran a good deal of my life by rules of that kind. And out there, I built a station and made artificial lightning on a scale nobody had attempted. John Jacob Astor lent me $30,000 to get there.
What did Astor think he was funding?
A new lighting system. That is what I told him, and that is what he believed he was buying an interest in. I spent it on wireless power experiments instead. It was not a misunderstanding. I took money for one purpose and used it for another, because I believed completely that the second purpose mattered more.
Did you ever square that with him?
Not honestly, no. Later, when I needed him to trust me further, I told him the Westinghouse royalty had been worth something in the neighborhood of $500,000. It was not a figure I could have proven to anyone. I offered it because it sounded like the kind of number that keeps a man's confidence. That is the pattern. Raise money for one thing, spend it on another, and when the well runs low, offer a number nobody can check.
You're not softening any of that. Why not?
Because the other version is available to anyone who wants it, and it is false. I was not only wronged, I was careless with other people's trust, and I knew it at the time.
And then you put all of it in print. What was the essay?
I called it The Problem of Increasing Human Energy for the Century. My fullest public statement of what I believed possible. Energy drawn from the environment itself, transmitted without wires, available anywhere on Earth. To some people, it read like a genuine vision of the future. To J. Pierpont Morgan, it read like an opportunity. In March of 1901, he gave me $150,000 for a 51% interest in the wireless patents that would come out of it.
51%. He'd own the majority of an invention that didn't exist yet. Did that not stop you?
Nothing stopped me. I began building at once. Wardenclyffe, out at Shoreham on Long Island. Stanford White designs the building himself. A tower nearly 200 feet high, meant to be the first station in a system that would girdle the globe. And I told Morgan I was building a wireless telegraph service to compete with Marconi's. That was true as far as it went. It was not the whole of what I intended.
What was the whole of it?
Power. Not messages, power itself, sent through the air or the ground to any point on Earth. No wires, no meters. Telegraphy was the business I could explain to a banker. Power was the thing I wanted to build. I let Morgan believe he was funding the smaller idea because I did not think he would fund the larger one.
And then Marconi got there first. What did that do to you?
It took the argument out from under me. December of 1901, he sent a single letter, S, across the Atlantic, from Cornwall to Newfoundland, with equipment far simpler than mine. My telegraphy case to Morgan collapsed in that instant. My ambition only grew, and I no longer had a clean story to tell the man paying for it.
When did you finally tell him the truth?
Too late. July of 1903. I wrote and admitted what the project had actually become, and his reply came back within days. One sentence. I have received your letter, and in reply would say that I should not feel disposed at present to make any further advances.
That's it? That's the entire letter.
That is the entire letter. He simply closed a door, in the flattest language a banker owns, and the largest project of my life stopped that week. Not for want of belief on my part. I believed in it completely, right up to the moment it became clear that belief was the only capital I had left.
What happened to Wardenclyffe after that?
It sat there. I kept trying to raise money elsewhere and failed. In 1912, Westinghouse, Church, Kerr and Company won a judgment against me for $23,500 for machinery they had supplied, and the equipment was hauled off the property.
So how are you still paying to live?
I wasn't, really. To keep a hotel roof over my head, I gave George Bolt, who owns the Waldorf Astoria, 2 mortgages on Wardenclyffe itself, against bills of about $20,000 I owed him. And I asked him not to record them.
Why not record them?
Because I was still telling myself the project might be revived, and if the world knew the land was mortgaged to a hotelier for unpaid room service, nobody serious would ever fund it again. I was protecting a fiction with a real legal instrument. By 1915, I could not pay even that, and the deed passed quietly to the Waldorf's interests through an intermediary. I no longer owned the ground the tower stood on.
And the tower? What happened to it in the end?
It stood empty for 2 more years. Then, on the 4th of July, 1917, Independence Day, though I doubt the salvage crew chose the date on purpose, it was dynamited for scrap metal. Whatever it might have proven about wireless power, it never got the chance. It came down for the value of the steel in it, which by then was worth more than the idea.
There was a rumor about that tower during the war. What was it?
That it was some kind of signal station for German agents. It had no basis I ever saw, and nothing came of it beyond talk. But it was the first time my loyalty as a naturalized citizen was quietly questioned by people who never asked me a single direct question about it. It would not be the last time.
How did you spend the years after that?
Working mostly, though not at the scale people expect. I developed a turbine with no blades at all, smooth discs spinning close together, the fluid dragged along by friction rather than pushed. Elegant. It never reached commercial production. And in 1917, the Engineering Institute gave me the Edison Medal of all the names to put on it, and I found the honor almost impossible to sit through gracefully.
Because of whose name was on it?
Partly. Mostly because by then I understood that medals arrive after the money has already stopped, as a kind of consolation.
And yet, in 1931, the world remembered you, rather loudly. What happened?
My 75th birthday. A journalist named Kenneth Sweezy organized a tribute, and I found myself on the cover of Time that July, with letters arriving from more than 70 scientists and engineers around the world. Einstein wrote himself. As an eminent pioneer in the realm of high-frequency currents, he said, I congratulate you on the great successes of your life's work. Genuinely warm. I kept it.
70 letters and Einstein. Where were you actually living when all that arrived?
A hotel room. The 20th floor of the Governor Clinton. Their man came expecting a laboratory, I think, and found me sitting with my albums. I had been clipping my own press for years by then. 57 volumes of it, annotated and indexed by subject, in my own hand.
You didn't return the warmth on everything, though. What did you actually think of his physics?
I never hid it. I told interviewers that I found relativity an elegant mathematical exercise with no physical substance behind it, a beautiful garment with nothing wearing it. That was my opinion, argued in magazines. It was not a rival theory I ever built apparatus to test. Einstein and I respected one another entirely. We simply each thought the other wrong about something rather large.
Can you actually respect a man and think he's badly wrong?
Huh! It is the only kind worth having. Flattery costs nothing between strangers.
And where did you go, in the end?
The Hotel New Yorker in 1933. Rooms on the 33rd floor, and I stayed there the rest of my life. I fed the pigeons in the parks nearby and nursed the injured ones in my room. People have made a great deal of that habit since. It was company I could keep on my own terms, at an hour when nobody else was awake to interrupt it.
And the announcements got larger. A motor powered by cosmic rays, a new source of energy. What were you actually claiming by then?
Larger and larger. 1932, then 1933, and after that the one people still ask about. A defensive weapon I called Teleforce, a beam that could stop an army at a distance. I offered it to several governments, and I told them the plans could never be stolen because they existed only in my own mind.
And was there anything to steal?
No. There was no apparatus behind any of those claims that I could have shown you. There had never needed to be with the induction motor, because I built it in the end and it ran. I never built these. I am not certain I could have. The method only ever worked because it was eventually tested against metal, and by then, nothing was being tested against anything. I had my own certainty left, and I went on offering it as though it were still the currency it had been at Budapest.
Take me to the end of it. January 1943. What happened?
I did not wake up. The 7th of January in room 3327 at the New Yorker, alone, as I had lived most of those last years. A maid found me the following morning. I had left a sign on the door the night before, and she respected it a day too long. Coronary thrombosis, they said. I was 86.
What happened to your papers afterward?
The federal government seized them almost immediately. The Office of Alien Property, acting on wartime fear about the death ray claims. I had been a citizen for over 50 years by then. I had done every piece of paperwork this country ever asked of me. And at the one moment it might have mattered, it did not stop a single box from being taken. Twice in my life, 30 years apart.
What did they find when they finally looked?
A physicist from MIT, John Trump, went through everything. His verdict was that the papers were, in his words, primarily speculative, philosophical, and promotional in character, nothing resembling a workable weapon anywhere in them. There was even a box, rumored for years to hold the device itself, sitting in another hotel's safe. When it was finally opened, it held old testing equipment. Nothing more dramatic than that.
And the Supreme Court ruled on a radio patent case that same year. People say it handed you radio. Did it?
It did not. Marconi's company against the United States. People tell it since as though the court handed me the invention of radio after I was gone. The justices invalidated Marconi's broadest claims, yes, and they discussed my patent among the prior art that undercut him. But the decision rested on another man's work, John Stone's, more than mine. I was not a party. I was already dead. I received nothing from it, then or since. It corrected Marconi. It did not vindicate me.
So what's actually true, in the end, about what you had versus what came after?
What I had at the end was a hotel room, debts I never cleared, and a government report calling my final decade largely speculative. That is what I actually experienced. Everything else, the estate my nephew Sava Kosanovic carried to Belgrade in 1952, the museum they built to hold it, my name on machines and companies and magnets I never touched. All of that was built afterwards by other people for their own reasons. I did not live to see any of it.
I ask everyone the same 3 questions at the end. Here's the first. What do people most misunderstand about you?
That I was a victim. That some combination of Edison and Morgan and the system, as people like to say, robbed a defenseless genius of what was his. It is a comforting story, and I understand why it persists, but it is not true. Long before Morgan ever entered my life, I signed patents on my own foundational work that gave 2/3 of it away to Peck and Brown and kept 1/3 for myself. Nobody forced my hand. I wanted the laboratory more than I wanted the ownership, and I made that trade willingly, over and over for decades. I was not robbed. I simply never built the part of myself that knew how to keep what I made.
What did the world actually gain from your work? And what did it cost you?
The gain is easy because you named it yourself at the start. The current in the wall behind you, in every wall, came out of what I built with Westinghouse and proved at Niagara. That part I will take without false modesty. It is mine. The cost is harder. Ownership went first, by my own signature. Then the security that should have followed a discovery of that size, that simply never arrived. Then one afternoon in 1895 took apparatus that had taken years to build and existed nowhere else on Earth, and no amount of money ever bought it back. And the last one was quieter and worse. Serious men stopped taking my word at face value, because I had spent that credit on claims I could no longer prove. The world got a system that runs forever. I did not keep the man who built it intact.
And the last one. You saw the whole machine before anyone else could believe it was possible, and you built it anyway, on nothing but your own certainty. What would you tell someone right now who has that same clarity in their head, and no one willing to fund it, patent it, or believe them before they know whether they're you or whether they're wrong?
I would not tell them it will work out, because for me it very nearly did not. And for most people who feel exactly what I felt, it doesn't. I would tell them the truth of my own life instead. All of it. In Graz, that same certainty cost me my scholarship and my family's patience, and very nearly my mind, and produced nothing for years but an obsession. In Budapest, the same faculty, unchanged, gave me a working motor hole in my head before the world had any way to build it. And it was right. And at Wardenclyffe, the very same certainty spent another man's fortune on a tower that was dynamited for scrap. The same trust in my own unverified vision. It paid out completely once. It failed catastrophically twice. So if you have that clarity, do not take it as proof you are right. Take it as a debt, something you will have to test against the world outside your own head eventually. And find people you trust to hold the parts you cannot see yourself. The money, the paper, whose name is on the thing. I never did that. It is the only part of my life I would actually change.
Nikola Tesla, thank you for this.
Thank you for asking it straight. Not everyone does.
That's Immortal Minds. If you want more of these, subscribe wherever you're listening. Next time, we sit down with a mind who filled his own notebooks with finished machines centuries before anyone could build them. Leonardo da Vinci.